Imagine walking down a regular street in your city on an ordinary morning and suddenly seeing someone dancing alone in the middle of the road. Not a happy dance, not a celebration, but strange, repetitive, almost painful movements. Now imagine that this person doesn't stop. Hours go by, the sun rises, sets, and they're still dancing, as if their body has been taken over by something that doesn't allow rest. You think about helping. Others try to hold them, try to calm them down. Nothing works. They dance until their feet bleed, until their body fails, until their mind seems disconnected. And while you're trying to understand what is happening, more people begin doing the same thing. One, then another, then another. Within days, dozens of people are dancing non-stop, as if trapped inside their own bodies. It sounds impossible, but this really happened. It was one of the strangest, scariest, and most unexplainable events in history. The outbreak became known as the Dancing Plague, and to this day, no one knows exactly what made so many people dance to death. It all began in 1518 in Strasbourg, a city that today belongs to France. Back then, life was harsh. Diseases were common. Hunger hit entire populations. The heat that summer was worse than usual, and the city felt heavy, almost suffocating. People were emotionally exhausted. That was when a woman named Frau Trophia walked out of her house, stepped into a narrow street, and started dancing. No music, no reason, no expression on her face. She just danced. At first, the neighbors found it strange, but not dangerous. Maybe she was joking, maybe celebrating something. But that theory collapsed when hours passed, and she didn't stop. She moved her arms, legs, spun around, stepped quickly without following any rhythm. It was as if her body was being commanded by an invisible force. On the first day, people gathered to watch. On the second, they were scared. On the third, she was still dancing, and her feet were injured, covered in blood. Even so, her body kept moving, like she had no other choice. It was impossible to rest, impossible to stop. Then something even stranger happened. Other people began dancing too. First a man, then a young woman, then two older ladies. Before long, dozens of people were dancing non-stop in the streets of Strasbourg. Their movements were frantic, repetitive, painful to watch. Some screamed for help. Others cried while dancing, as if trapped in a nightmare while fully awake. And no one had the slightest idea of what was happening. The news spread across the city quickly. Terrified, the authorities called doctors, religious leaders, and scholars to try to understand the phenomenon. Some believed it was divine punishment. Others thought it was some mysterious disease. There were even people who claimed the dancers were possessed, but no clear explanation appeared. As days passed, the situation became absurdly worse. In less than a week, more than 50 people were dancing non-stop. In a month, the number reached over 400. The streets filled with exhausted bodies, trembling muscles, wounded feet, and desperate faces. Many collapsed to the ground, trying to rest for a second. But soon, the body stood up again, as if pulled by a force no one could see. People danced so much and for so long that many died of exhaustion, dehydration, strokes, or heart attacks. They were slow, painful, completely incomprehensible for those who watched. And to make things worse, each death seemed to convince even more people that something supernatural was happening. And the more people believed in that belief, the more the panic spread. And the more the panic spread, the more people began dancing. Why did this happen there at that moment?
To understand, we need to look at the historical context. Strasbourg was facing extreme poverty. Crops were failing. Hunger was everywhere. People died of simple illnesses because there weren't enough resources. And on top of that, there was a strong belief in divine punishments sent by saints, especially Saint Vitus, a saint believed to punish sinners by making them dance uncontrollably. In other words, people were already terrified of this kind of divine curse, so if someone began dancing without control, many immediately assumed it was a spiritual punishment. This collective fear created the perfect environment for panic to spread. And when panic spreads, the human body reacts to ways science still struggles to understand. While the population tried to cope with the daily horror, the authorities made one of the strangest decisions in history. They encouraged even more dancing. They believed the dancers were possessed by dance, and that the only cure was to let them dance until the curse left their bodies. So they built stages, hired musicians, set up dancing areas. But the result was the opposite. The outbreak grew even worse. Music seemed to stimulate involuntary movements, as if the rhythm activated something deep inside the affected people, as if stopping was no longer an option. Musicians, terrified, eventually tried to stop playing, but by then, the outbreak was beyond control. Historical accounts say even children began dancing. Some families were hit all at once. There were reports of people fainting multiple times a day, yet getting up again automatically to continue dancing. The city fell into complete chaos. There were so many collapsed bodies on the streets that guards needed to drag people away to clear space. And the strangest part, no one knew why this was happening. Several theories exist today, but none are definitive. The first is ergot poisoning, caused by a fungus that grows in rye and produces chemicals similar to LSD. It can cause hallucinations and convulsions. Some experts think the population ate contaminated bread, but the theory has issues. Ergot poisoning usually causes severe pain, uncontrolled spasms, even gangrene. It doesn't cause coordinated dancing, and it wouldn't infect hundreds at once in that way. The second theory, considered the most likely, is mass psychogenic illness, also called mass psychogenic illness. This occurs when a large group under extreme stress begins copying one another's physical symptoms unconsciously. The mind collapses and the body responds automatically. Rare today, but common in ancient societies shaped by fear and religion. But even this theory doesn't explain everything. The dancing plague didn't last hours or days, it lasted weeks. It killed many, and some people reported hearing sounds no one else heard. Others said they felt invisible hands pulling their legs. Some claimed to see dark figures watching them as they danced. These rare testimonies appear in old records rarely quoted, but they exist, and they make everything even more enigmatic. Another strange fact, this wasn't the only dancing outbreak in history. Smaller dance epidemics happened in other European cities during the Middle Ages, but none of them were as big and deadly as Strasbourg's. It was as if something unique happened there, something that created perfect conditions for the most bizarre outbreak ever recorded. As the dancers kept moving, families began isolating their relatives, trying to stop them from being contaminated, but it didn't work. Some people started dancing even without witnessing a dancer firsthand, as if the mere idea of it was enough to trigger the symptom. Fear spread even faster than any disease, and the more people believed it was a divine punishment, the more vulnerable they became. The human mind is powerful, much more powerful than we usually think, and when fear takes over, it becomes almost impossible to control. Desperate, the authorities tried everything: isolating dancers, public prayers, priests, doctors, healers. Nothing worked. the city lived one of the darkest moments of its history. The heat was unbearable, hunger increased, the streets smelled of sweat, blood, and dust. The sound of frantic footsteps echoed day and night. Only after several weeks, when many dancers were already at the brink of collapse, did the epidemic begin to slow down. Some were taken to a sanctuary dedicated to Saint Vitus, where they underwent religious rituals. Some recovered, others died on the way, others were never the same again. And just like that, without a clear explanation, cure, or logic, the dancing plague simply disappeared, the same mysterious way it began. What really happened? Was it mind collapse, a substance affecting the brain, or something else entirely?